All right, so today we're diving into a place that's been making headlines and sparking some serious geopolitical intrigue, Greenland.
Yeah.
You might remember a few years back when Trump proposed buying it.
Oh, yeah. That was
It was a big deal.
a wild story.
Yeah, it made news everywhere.
Absolutely.
Well, it turns out that was just the tip of the iceberg,
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
so to speak.
What's really captivating is how Greenland has transformed from this seemingly insignificant territory
Right.
into a focal point of global power dynamics.
Yeah, and we're not just going to skim the surface here. We've got news articles, expert analyses, even some social media buzz, the whole 9 yards.
That's right. We're going deep on this one.
We're going to unpack why Greenland has suddenly become so important,
Yeah.
who's vying for influence, and what it all means for the future.
That's to be fascinating.
Oh, and if you're enjoying this deep dive, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on future episodes.
Yeah, we appreciate the support.
Leave a comment, too. We love hearing from you.
Absolutely.
So it's fascinating how a place most people couldn't point to on a map a few years ago is now at the heart of a global power struggle.
You're absolutely right.
Right.
It really is.
And it goes way beyond just its location, although
Yeah.
being nestled between North America and Europe certainly doesn't hurt.
Oh, no, it's prime real estate.
Yeah.
Geopolitically speaking.
Greenland's sitting on a potential goldmine of resources
Yeah.
that are becoming increasingly valuable in today's world.
We're talking rare earth minerals, essential for all those high-tech gadgets we rely on,
Oh, yeah.
and oil reserves that could become even more crucial as global energy demands continue to rise.
Wow.
Plus, with the Arctic ice melting, there's the potential for new shipping routes
Oh, right.
that could completely reshape global trade.
It's like the Arctic is the new frontier.
Yeah.
Everyone wants a piece of the action.
That's a great analogy.
But there's another layer to this story that often gets overlooked. Greenland's own aspirations for independence from Denmark.
Right, this adds a whole new dimension to the power dynamics.
Exactly.
Greenland sees this global interest as an opportunity to leverage their position and push for greater autonomy.
So they're not just passively sitting by while the big players make their moves.
Not at all.
They're actively trying to shape their own destiny.
Precisely. But it's a delicate balancing act.
I bet.
They need investment and allies to achieve their goals.
Right.
But they don't want to become pawns in someone else's game.
Oh, I see.
This is where the story gets really interesting.
Okay, so we've got this perfect storm brewing strategic location,
Yeah.
valuable resources, a push for independence, and rising global powers all vying for influence.
It's a recipe for intrigue.
So where should we dive in first?
Well, let's start with addressing the elephant in the room, Trump's infamous proposal to buy Greenland back in 2019.
Oh, yeah.
While the idea was ultimately dismissed, it did reveal the growing strategic importance of the Arctic region.
I remember that causing quite a stir.
Oh, yeah.
Sending Don Jr. on that highly publicized trip to Greenland certainly added fuel to the fire.
For sure, it was a spectacle.
Yeah, it felt like a calculated move to assert American dominance in the region.
Well, while the theatrics might have overshadowed the substance, there was a clear strategic rationale behind Trump's actions.
Okay.
The U.S. already has the Thule Air Base in Greenland,
Right.
which is crucial for missile defense and space surveillance.
And with China and Russia becoming more active in the Arctic, the U.S. wants to make sure it maintains its military edge.
Exactly. But the bigger picture goes beyond just military presence.
Okay.
It's about securing access to resources and controlling key shipping routes
Yeah.
that will become increasingly important as the Arctic ice continues to melt.
So Trump's play, regardless of how it was presented,
Right.
was essentially a wake-up call to Denmark,
It was a power move for sure.
saying, hey, step up your game in the Arctic or we're going to have a problem.
That's one way to put it.
And while Denmark initially rejected Trump's proposal outright,
Yeah, they weren't having it.
they haven't been ignoring the shifting dynamics in the region.
They've been paying attention.
They've significantly increased their military spending in Greenland, bolstering their Arctic command, and investing in new equipment.
They're not taking any chances.
So they're not just rolling over and letting the U.S. dictate the terms.
Definitely not.
They're taking steps to assert their own sovereignty.
They want to be a player in the Arctic.
But this brings up an interesting question. How does China factor into all of this?
Well, China has been making some bold moves in the Arctic as part of their Polar Silk Road initiative.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that.
They're looking to secure shipping routes and access to resources as the region becomes more accessible.
And I'm guessing they're particularly interested in those rare earth minerals that Greenland has in abundance.
You bet they're essential for a wide range of technologies, from smartphones to electric vehicles.
Wow.
and China wants to control as much of the global supply chain as possible.
So they're trying to get a foothold in Greenland to secure access to those valuable resources.
That's the strategy.
But I'm sure the U.S. isn't thrilled about China's growing influence in their backyard.
Absolutely. There is a growing concern in Washington that China is using its economic clout to gain strategic leverage in the Arctic.
This debt trap diplomacy tactic has raised red flags.
Oh, yeah, that's a major concern.
Hold on. Could you explain what debt trap diplomacy is for our listeners who might not be familiar with the term?
Sure, it's essentially a strategy where China offers loans to developing countries for infrastructure projects that they might not be able to repay.
Right.
And when those countries default on their loans, China can then use that leverage to gain access to strategic assets or resources.
Ooh, that's sneaky.
Some analysts argue that this is part of a larger strategy to expand China's global influence.
So we've got the U.S. trying to maintain its dominance, China looking to expand its influence,
Yeah.
and Denmark trying to assert its sovereignty.
It's a three-way tug of war.
But what about Greenland? Where do they stand in all of this?
That's where things get really fascinating.
Okay, tell me more.
Greenland is in a unique position to play these competing powers against each other.
I see.
They're looking to use this global interest to their advantage as they push for independence.
So they're not just a pawn in this geopolitical chess game.
Exactly.
They're actively shaping their own destiny.
They're holding the cards in a lot of ways.
Wow. This is already shaping up to be a fascinating discussion.
This whole situation with Greenland reminds me of a quote from a Greenlandic politician a few years back.
Oh, really?
He said something like, Greenland needing a bigger brother to help them achieve independence and economic stability.
Wow.
He even suggested that the U.S. was already essentially renting a big area of land in Greenland
Oh, wow.
and should be paying more for it.
That's a pretty bold statement.
It is.
It sounds like they're not afraid to play hardball with both Denmark and the U.S. to get what they want.
They're definitely playing a strategic game.
I guess when you're sitting on a treasure trove of resources,
Yeah,
you have a little more leverage.
absolutely. Resources equal power in many ways.
Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel if you're finding this deep dive as fascinating as I am.
Yeah, we'd love to have you join our community.
We're just scratching the surface here.
There's so much more to uncover.
It really highlights the complex historical dynamics at play.
Yeah.
Greenland sees its relationship with Denmark as one rooted in colonialism,
Right.
and they're eager to break free from that legacy.
It's a story of self-determination.
It's angry. It's understandable that they want to control their own destiny,
Absolutely.
especially with so much at stake.
The stakes are very high.
Exactly.
They're looking for partners who will genuinely support their independence ambitions and treat them as equals,
Right.
not just exploit their resources for their own gain.
So we've got Trump making power plays, China trying to make inroads, and Greenland trying to chart its own course.
It's a multipolar world out there.
It's like a high-stakes game of Risk playing out in the Arctic.
That's a great way to visualize it.
What does all of this mean for the future of the region?
Well, one clear consequence is the increasing militarization of the Arctic.
Oh, really?
The U.S. is upgrading its military infrastructure in Greenland,
Yeah.
and both Russia and China are expanding their Arctic presence as well.
So this pristine, icy landscape is turning into a potential flashpoint for conflict.
There's definitely a risk of that.
It's a sobering thought.
It is, but hopefully one that can be avoided through diplomacy and cooperation. The key is to find a way to balance the competing interests in the region
Right.
and ensure that everyone feels their concerns are being addressed.
But how do you achieve that when you have superpowers vying for dominance?
It's a challenge for sure.
It feels like a high-stakes game of chess with Greenland right in the middle of the board.
It's a geopolitical chess match, no doubt.
This is precisely why it's so crucial to understand Greenland's perspective.
Yeah.
They're not just a piece of land to be fought over.
Right.
They're a people with their own aspirations, concerns, and a rich cultural heritage
Absolutely.
that often gets overlooked in these discussions.
It's important to remember the human element.
It's easy to get caught up in the geopolitical maneuvering and forget that there are real people whose lives are directly affected by these power struggles.
That's a crucial point.
Absolutely. Their choices will have ripple effects throughout the region and beyond.
Yeah.
Not just in terms of geopolitics, but also in terms of the environment and the lives of the people who call Greenland home.
It's an interconnected world.
Speaking of the environment, we can't ignore the elephant in the room, or should I say the melting glacier,
Climate change.
climate change.
It's the biggest challenge facing the Arctic.
The Arctic is on the front lines of climate change.
Absolutely.
And the melting ice caps are opening up new shipping routes and access to resources.
It's a double-edged sword.
But this also poses huge risks to the fragile ecosystem and the traditional way of life for the Inuit people.
Climate change is a threat to both the environment and the culture of the Arctic.
It's a reminder that geopolitical maneuvering often comes at a cost.
Yes.
And sometimes that cost is borne by the most vulnerable communities and the environment itself.
We need to consider the unintended consequences of our actions.
So where do things stand now? What's the latest in this ongoing saga?
Well, despite all the initial talk of buying Greenland, the U.S. seems to have shifted its strategy towards strengthening its alliance with Denmark and supporting Greenland's autonomy within that existing framework.
So it's less America first and more, let's work together to counter China these days.
It seems that way. They're taking a more collaborative approach, at least for now.
But it's important to note that this doesn't mean the U.S. has abandoned its strategic interests in the region.
No, they're still very much committed to maintaining their presence and influence in the Arctic.
And what about China? Have they backed down in the face of this renewed U.S. engagement?
Not at all. They're still investing in Arctic research and infrastructure and looking for opportunities to expand their economic ties with Greenland.
Oh, interesting.
For example, they recently funded a major zinc and lead mining project in Greenland,
Really?
much to the chagrin of the U.S.
Wow.
It's a constant back and forth with each side trying to gain an advantage.
So it's like a geopolitical dance with everyone trying to position themselves for the best possible outcome.
Exactly. It's a complex and ever-evolving situation.
It's hard to predict what the next move will be, but one thing's for sure. The Arctic will remain a hotbed of activity for years to come.
Absolutely. It's the new geopolitical frontier.
And Greenland will be right at the center of it all.
They're the key player in this game.
Their decisions about independence, economic development, and their relationships with global powers will have profound implications for the region's future.
Greenland's choices will shape the future of the Arctic.
This has been a truly fascinating deep dive. It's amazing how a place that seems so remote has suddenly become so central to global affairs.
It's a testament to how interconnected our world is.
And if you're enjoying this insightful analysis, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment to help us reach more listeners like you.
We appreciate your support.
We really appreciate your support.
It means a lot to us.
It really challenges our traditional understanding of power dynamics.
Right.
You know, we often think of power in terms of military strength or economic dominance.
Right.
But Greenland is showing that there's another kind of power at play.
Yeah.
It's the power of geography.
Absolutely.
Greenland's location gives them influence that punches way above their size or economic output.
You know, they're like the gatekeepers to a whole new frontier.
Right.
And everybody wants to be on their good side.
It's a classic David and Goliath scenario.
It really is.
But in this case, David's holding all the cards.
Yeah, they've got leverage.
They're securing investments and concessions that would have been unimaginable a few years ago.
The tables have turned.
It's a reminder that smaller nations can still have influence.
Yeah.
If they play their cards right.
Absolutely.
And Greenland is playing their cards masterfully.
It's impressive.
They're leveraging this attention to advance their interests, whether it's funding for infrastructure or pushing for more autonomy.
They're playing the long game.
It's a textbook example of how to make the most of a unique situation.
It really is a case study in strategic maneuvering.
What's fascinating is how Greenland's pursuit of independence is tied to climate change.
Oh, yeah. That's a crucial factor.
As the Arctic ice melts, Greenland is gaining access to new resources and shipping routes.
It's a double-edged sword for sure.
This is boosting their economy and giving them a greater sense of self-reliance,
Right.
which fuels their independence movement.
It's a complex dynamic.
It's ironic how climate change, a global threat, is empowering Greenland.
It is.
It's a reminder that the impacts of climate change are unevenly distributed, creating winners and losers in unexpected ways.
It highlights the complexity of these global challenges.
And it underscores the need for a more nuanced understanding.
Yeah.
We tend to see things in black and white terms,
Right.
but the reality is far more complex.
Absolutely. The situation with Greenland is a perfect example.
So what does the future hold for Greenland?
Well, that's a million-dollar question.
Will they achieve full independence?
It's hard to say for sure.
Will they become a key player in this new Arctic order?
One thing is certain.
What's that?
Greenland will continue to be a focal point of geopolitical interest.
Right.
And a key driver of change in the Arctic.
It's been a wild ride unpacking this geopolitical puzzle.
It has been a fascinating discussion.
But I think we've shed some light on the complex forces at play in Greenland.
We've definitely explored some key insights.
Who knew a place so seemingly remote could be so central to global power dynamics?
It's a reminder that geography still matters.
If you enjoyed this deep dive into geopolitics, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more insightful analysis.
We appreciate your support.
And while you're at it, leave a comment below and let us know what you think about Greenland's future.
We love hearing from you.
We love hearing from you.
It's a story that's far from over, so stay tuned.
And if you're feeling really generous, consider supporting our Standing in the Gaps podcast's GoFundMe campaign.
Yeah, every little bit helps.
We're raising money to improve our production quality,
That's right.
so we can reach a wider audience and provide you with even better content.
We're investing in things like webcams, studio microphones, editing computers, the whole shebang.
Every little bit helps us bring you these deep dives into the most pressing issues of our time.
We appreciate your support in helping us make Standing in the Gaps the best it can be.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the geopolitical landscape of Greenland. Remember, the world is a complex and ever-changing place. Stay informed, stay curious, and most importantly, stay engaged.